July 20th, 1973. It is a date etched into the collective memory of the world, a day when time seemed to fracture. Bruce Lee, the Little Dragon, the man who redefined masculinity, martial arts, and Asian identity, was gone. He was 32 years old, at the absolute zenith of his physical prowess and global fame. One moment, he was the invincible warrior. The next, he was a headline that no one wanted to believe. For over 5 decades, the official narrative was a sterile, medical explanation, a death by misadventure caused by a tragic allergic reaction to a single painkiller, Equagesic. But the streets of Hong Kong whispered a different story. They whispered of triad hits, secret poisonings, and the touch of death. And at the center of this swirling vortex of conspiracy stood one woman, Ting Pei. For 53 years, Betty carried the heaviest burden a human heart can endure, the blame for a legend's demise. Now, at 78, sitting in a quiet studio at TVB Hong Kong, the silence has finally broken. Her voice, though trembling with the frailty of age, carries a quiet, steel-like determination. This is not just a retelling, it is the final confession. Ting Pei, the star of destiny. How does a single decision alter the trajectory of a life? For Ting Pei, born on February 19, 1947, in Taipei, her path seemed preordained. She was the daughter of a prestigious medical dynasty. For 3 generations, the Ting family had produced renowned physicians. Her father expected her to don the white coat of medicine, to live a life of quiet, honorable service in the clinics of Taiwan. But Betty was a creature of light and shadow. While her peers studied biology, Betty studied the way light hit a stage. She was drawn to the magnetism of the silver screen. To her conservative family, the entertainment industry was a den of instability and low social standing. The tension at home became a suffocating fog. Her father's reminders that a proper lady belongs in a laboratory, not a film studio, only fueled her fire. In the late 1960s, Betty made her move. With little more than a suitcase and a heart full of ambition, she moved to Hong Kong, the Hollywood of the East. She started in the trenches of the industry, taking minor modeling gigs and background roles. But you couldn't hide a face like hers. Her beauty was a weapon, sharp, elegant, and timeless. Soon, she was signed to the legendary Shaw Brothers studio and later, Golden Harvest. By the early 70s, she was a star, often cast as the femme fatale. She was the woman who lured men to their doom on screen. Little did she know, life was preparing to imitate art in the most tragic way possible. In 1969, standing in a dimly lit dressing room, staring at her reflection in a cheongsam, she whispered to herself, "I will not be just another pretty face. One day, I will become a legend." Destiny heard her, but it was a cruel listener. Her name would indeed become legendary, but not for her acting. It would be linked forever to the final, gasping breath of Bruce Lee. The secret romance, love in the shadow of fame. By 1971, Bruce Lee was a god among men. After the Big Boss and Fist of Fury, he had shattered the sick man of East Asia trope forever. But behind the scenes, the Little Dragon was a man under siege. He was a father to Brandon and Shannon, a husband to Linda, and a businessman under crushing pressure to deliver Enter the Dragon. Bruce and Betty met at the Hyatt Regency Hotel, introduced by the mogul Raymond Chow. It wasn't a lightning bolt, it was something deeper, a recognition. Bruce was instantly drawn to her. Unlike the sycophants who surrounded him, Betty didn't see the dragon. She saw the man. In her 2025 interview with Royal Time of Hollywood, Betty's eyes softened as she confirmed the truth. Bruce was the one who pursued me. We were real lovers. It was deep, it was intimate, and it was real. Their sanctuary was her apartment in Kowloon Tong. It was a modest place, filled with the scent of jasmine and the soft hum of the city. For Bruce, that apartment was the only place on earth where he didn't have to be Bruce Lee. He could be vulnerable. He could be tired. One night, Bruce sat on her couch, his head in his hands, and whispered, "Betty, you are the only place where I can cry. The world wants me to be a flying dragon, but here, I am just a man." He was a man pushing himself to the absolute limit, eating 1 meal a day, training 10 hours, and using diuretics to achieve that ripped, enter the dragon look. He was a candle burning at both ends, and Betty was the only one watching the wax melt. Triads, threats, and the deadly habit. As 1973 began, the atmosphere in Hong Kong turned toxic. The triads, organized crime syndicates, controlled the film industry. They wanted a piece of Bruce Lee. They wanted protection money, a cut of the massive profits his films generated. Bruce, ever the rebel, refused to bow. Betty recalls seeing the white envelopes, no stamps, just chilling messages. Pay or disappear. Bruce would laugh it off with a dark, bitter humor, but the stress was eating him alive. At the same time, his health was failing. In May 1973, he collapsed during a dubbing session. He had cerebral edema, swelling of the brain. The doctors warned him. He didn't listen. He doubled down. He was taking Equagesic for his chronic back pain and headaches, a habit that Betty watched with growing alarm. He was thin, his eyes were sunken, and he was constantly looking over his shoulder. The training, the pills, the threats, "You're killing yourself," Betty had warned him. Bruce just held her tighter, his heart racing like a trapped bird. The storm wasn't coming. It was already there. July 20th, the minute-by-minute tragedy. The heat on July 20th was stifling. Bruce had spent the day working on fight choreography. He arrived at Betty's apartment at 5 p.m., looking like a ghost. "I just need to breathe," he told her. Around 7 p.m., the dragon was felled by a simple headache. He clutched his temples, his face contorted in agony. Betty gave him a single Equagesic tablet. He went to lie down on her bed. "Wake me up in an hour," he said. "I have dinner with Raymond." He never woke up. The hours that followed were a blur of rising panic. Raymond Chow arrived. They shook him. They slapped his face. They called a private doctor. By the time the ambulance arrived at 10 p.m., the light of the 20th century's greatest icon had already flickered out. Bruce Lee was pronounced dead at 10:30 p.m. at Queen Elizabeth Hospital. Betty remembers his last look, a look of profound fear, as if he wanted to tell her a secret that was too heavy to carry. "I've regretted that moment for 53 years, she told Royal Time of Hollywood. "I wish I had forced him to speak." The 50-year silence and the final truth. The aftermath was a massacre of Betty's character. The media labeled her the femme fatale of death. They said she poisoned him. They said she was a triad honey trap. She lost her career, her privacy, and her peace. She stayed silent for 5 decades to protect Bruce's family and his heroic image. But now, at 78, the truth is out. Bruce wasn't murdered by a pill or a triad hitman. He was consumed by his own legend. The pressure of being a global idol, the physical toll of his extreme routines, the constant threat of the underworld, and a body that simply couldn't keep up with his spirit. That is the darker truth. He was a brilliant but exhausted man, Betty concluded. The fire that made him a legend was the same fire that burned him out. Closing thoughts. The mystery of Bruce Lee's death has finally found its closing chapter. Betty Ting Pei's confession reminds us that behind every icon is a human being, fragile and fraught with secrets. What do you think about Betty's revelation? Do you believe the triad threats played a bigger role than she admits, or was it truly the way to fame that crushed the dragon? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Hollywood history, please subscribe to Royal Time of Hollywood, like the video, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next investigation into the lives of the legends.